Okay, let's cross over to Insight anchor Anand in Singapore with our next guest. And what a guest it is, Haz.
Well, it is the Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita, who's on a three-nation visit here in Singapore, in Asia. She was in India and headed towards China next. Minister, good to have you with us. You're coming at a time when we're seeing tit-for-tat trade war in the U.S. and China. How are you navigating relations between the two sides? These are the two largest trading partners for Canada.
It's such a good point. Canada is a Pacific nation ourselves. We have an Indo-Pacific strategy. We're doubling down on the Indo-Pacific, making sure that we're diversifying supply chains, building trading relationships across the region. Indeed, we're looking forward to an FTA with the ASEAN in 2026. So India, Singapore, China are all important in terms of our diversification strategy, and certainly my meeting today with Vivian Balakrishnan, the Foreign Minister of Singapore, was instrumental in our work here in the Asia-Pacific.
Of course, your visit to this part of the world comes against the backdrop of China imposing fresh curbs on rare earths. We have, Scott Bessent calling on the G7 nations to come together for a coordinated response. Are you looking for a coordinated response with the U.S.?
We have a free trade agreement with the United States that we're very much looking forward to reviewing in 2026. And in terms of multilateral trading relationships, we're the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. And as I said, the Indo-Pacific is extremely important. I'm just coming off a trip to India where we finalized a joint statement for cooperation on public security matters, but also on energy, on critical minerals, on resilient trade routes, on agriculture and agri-foods.
But rare earths are an important issue for the world.
Yes.
Is Canada looking for a coordinated response with the U.S.? And how might a response look like?
Well, Canada's actually looking out for our sovereign interests and our economic interests. Our diplomacy is very much about ensuring that our economic picture benefits from our diplomacy. And so, yes, we're talking about critical minerals internationally. We're talking about energy internationally. We're talking about Canada's depth and wealth in natural resources.
So looking to be part of the response with the U.S., is that correct?
Canada is right now the host of the G7. So across our government, various ministers are in touch with the G7 counterparts, for sure. But I will say that we are also very much focused on our domestic economic interests and how we can further those interests by diversifying supply chains. This is why I'm in the Indo-Pacific right now.
So what does that mean in terms of relations with China? How do you put Canadians first in your relations with China?
Well, we actually do a significant amount of trade with China. After the United States, China is one of our largest trading partners, although with the United States it's at about 80%, so the relative number is smaller. But I will say that we need to open the ability to have a dialogue with China so that when there are issues of concern in the relationship, we can come to the table and raise them. I will say that we challenge China where we must, and we cooperate with China where we can. That has been the strategy with China, and it will continue to be.
And what's the biggest challenge when it comes to your relations with China? What's key?
It's a good question because the relationship is so complex. The key is to open the strategic dialogue. In addition, we need to allow trading to continue. We need to raise some issues relating to human rights and the South China Seas. But all in all, we need to be able to have that dialogue.
Canadians are key for Canada to mend its ties with China, and some have suggested, especially those in West Canada, that perhaps you need to lift the tariffs on Chinese EVs. What are your thoughts on that? Is that on the table for Canada?
As I said, as Foreign Minister, my role is to lay the foundation for the dialogue across a number of sectors with all countries, including China. That's why I was in India. That was part of my discussion with Vivian Balakrishnan this morning, and that is the message I'll be taking to China tomorrow. Again, Canada has depth in so many sectors: critical minerals, natural resources, energy, artificial intelligence. We cooperate with China where we can, say in the area of climate change. We also need to raise issues of strategic importance to the Canadian economy, and that will be on the table tomorrow.
Realistically, though, I mean, how much can be achieved in your visit? How much can you mend relations, given outstanding issues between the two sides?
I would say that with China, we have had many positive conversations. I just spoke with Minister Wang Yi in Kuala Lumpur in July, for example, and we had a constructive bilateral dialogue, and we will continue to have that constructive professional conversations as we must in the interests of our two countries and the global economy.
Minister, we know that Canada wants to export more LNG and oil to China and some of the other Asian nations. Where are you with that? Have you had any sense of commitment from any of the nations here?
Again, a great question, given Canada's competitive advantage in LNG. We have demand from all over the world for our LNG. We've had a shipment leave the west coast of Canada, the coast of British Columbia, and we are continuing to develop our capacity for LNG, seeing significant interest. I have to say,
where from?
Every country I speak with is interested in Canadian LNG and Canadian energy, Canadian critical minerals. We have what the world wants in Canada, and now we are leveraging our competitive advantages. I'm not sure if you've heard, but we have 10 large national projects, including wind, including LNG, including nuclear energy with the development of an SMR at the Darlington nuclear plant. Countries around the world are asking how they can invest in these projects, and we welcome the interest.
Minister, just to be sure that China has indicated that it wants more of the Canadian LNG and oil exports. Is that correct?
I will have to get back to you after my conversation with Minister Wang Yi tomorrow. That is part of the conversation that we will have across the board, across sectors, making sure that we build the ability to have that strategic dialogue with China.
We know that 2 Canadians were detained on the back of the Huawei issue, and one of the Canadians actually said that in terms of China's approach to Canada, it's hostile. That was the word being used. How do you respond to that, and how do you mend relations under such circumstances?
Well, we have to recognize that the global strategic environment has shifted significantly. The global economy has shifted significantly, and this is a time of economic stress. And so the key for Canada is to be able to raise issues of concern at the table, to challenge countries where we must, and including China, and to cooperate where we can. Canada is a multilateral proponent. We believe in multilateralism. At a time when countries move towards protectionism and unilateralism, Canada's at the table. We will not retreat. We will continue to promote multilateral engagement across trade, across defense and security, and across global organizations, as we have seen and done since the end of the Second World War.
As you said, you came from India. You had conversations with Prime Minister Modi.
Yes.
To what extent have relations been mended, given that relations took quite a turn in 2023?
We are taking a step-by-step approach, a very systematic approach with India. At the foundation of that approach is a discussion about public security, ensuring that there is a law enforcement dialogue between the two countries. We also have an RCMP investigation occurring in Canada that is an independent investigation. Over and above that, we want to make sure that the economic relationship proceeds in this step-by-step manner. That's why we finalized that joint statement with India. Unprecedented. We have not signed a joint statement with India in years and years. Now we are together at the table talking about how we can cooperate bilaterally on trade, on our economies, in terms of critical minerals, energy, agriculture, AI, etc.
Were there red lines stipulated by Ottawa? I mean, transnational repression is an issue.
Yes.
Where are you with that with India?
In every conversation, I made sure to emphasize the importance of the rule of law, public security in Canada, and respect for the laws that govern our country, because the protection and the safety of Canadian citizens is above all our priority as a government. In addition, on issues of foreign interference and on issues of transnational repression, of course, those are part of the conversation relating to the law enforcement dialogue and public security writ large.
Minister Anand, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for popping by.